It was the Christmas play dress rehearsal. I was wearing an amazing sheep costume. Mum managed to get a fleece from one of the farmers she worked with, so my outfit had been upgraded and was incredibly realistic, even though the hooves were made out of yoghurt pots and the horns were kitchen roll tubes that had been twisted and painted. Will was on the lighting deck at the back of the room, and the other kids were backstage handling costume changes and curtains and so on. I spotted Henry glancing at Will now and again with a bit of a sorry look on his face, but Will didn't seem to notice. He was still looking as pleased as Punch in the aftermath of his puzzle competition. Mr. Beaumont was darting about like he was directing a Hollywood movie, adjusting the rock star's wise men's inflatable guitars and making sure the angelic agent sunglasses were glittering in the huge overhead lights. To one side, Mary and Joseph were practicing their rags to riches quick change for the Superstar over Bethlehem number, and the doll playing the part of baby Jesus was sitting in a manger covered in sparkles and foil. Since Nick seemed to so embody the essence of Santa Claus, as Mr. Beaumont put it, his role had been upgraded from just giving out candy canes to leading the choir and actors in the final songs of the play. Right now, Nick was sitting at the back of the room waiting for Mr. Beaumont to give him his cue. "Right everyone, last big number," Mr. Beaumont yelled through cupped hands. "We've seen the greatest story ever told, and now it's time to have the big sing-along." He pointed with enthusiasm at the rear curtain, and it dropped down to reveal the painted-on lyrics for A Very Rocking Christmas. We all started to sing. We knew the words off by heart by this point in the practice, and the actions were automatic. But it was a great song, and it made everyone laugh and smile as we sang about the magic of Christmas, friendship, love, and eventually things like presents and Santa Claus. "Yes, that's your cue," Mr. Beaumont called to Nick, who stood up and picked up a soft-looking Santa hat and a sack. And everything about him suddenly seemed to change. There was a soft gasp from one of the donkeys next to me. Nick stood straighter, the sack slung over his shoulder, his stance at ease. The slightly moth-eaten hat on his head didn't look so dull or careworn anymore, but instead full and fluffy. His blue and red tartan shirt didn't seem out of place, and neither did his braces or work trousers. Out of nowhere, he transformed from a quiet man who'd been roped into taking part in a school play to someone who commanded the attention of the room. All the children in the hall stared as if recognising something about him that they'd previously forgotten. Mr. Beaumont didn't seem to have noticed, however, and a bit of "ho, ho, ho, if you please," a Merry Christmas, and then hand out the sweeties. Nick gave a smile that seemed to light him up from the inside. "Ho, ho, ho," he roared in a rolling laugh that echoed in the hall. "Merry Christmas!" And he reached into the sack and started handing out toys. "There's a jigsaw for you, Alice," he said, "and a football for you, Raffy, Lego for you, Joe, and a cuddly pig for you, Avery." "Wait a minute," Avery said, holding on to the cuddly pig. "Is this real? Can I keep it?" It was as though he'd flicked a switch, and suddenly the magical mood vanished. "Sorry," said Mr. Beaumont. Nick, did you put presents in the sack? It was supposed to be empty for the rehearsal." The festive joy radiating from Nick stopped, and instantly he was just a man in a Santa hat again, holding an obviously empty sack. "Oh," he said, not missing a beat. "I just thought I'd bring them all a treat since they've been working so hard." He reached into the sack and drew out a carrier bag full of small toys, as if it had been hiding inside the whole time. The shape of the sack hadn't changed at all. Mr. Beaumont tapped his chin with a finger. "Oh, well, it's very kind of you, but let's skip to the curtain call for now." Nick made his way to the front as the song changed to "We Wish You a Merry Christmas," the one that we'd reappear to at the end to give our bows. Mr. Beaumont waved his hand like an orchestra conductor, encouraging the imaginary audience of grown-ups to clap, and then the play was over. "Excellent work, everyone," he said. "I think we'll knock 'em dead tomorrow. Nick, are you all sorted with your costume?" "Yes, it's at the dry cleaners," Nick said. He pulled the hat off his head, and his wispy grey-white hair stuck up a bit from the static. "Lovely, lovely. Well, good night, everyone. We'll see you all tomorrow night at 6 o'clock sharp." Nick looked up at this. 6? "A few minutes before, if you can," Mr. Beaumont said, "just to be on the safe side." "I have to make sure the reindeer are fed and watered first," Nick said, looking thoughtful. Despite my earlier reservations about Nick being involved in the play, my heart sank a little. There was no denying he made an excellent Santa Claus, and he really brought the whole play together. What if he couldn't come after all and let everyone down? But Nick was smiling. I'm sure I'd be able to make it on time. In fact, I promised to be here. He caught my eye and gave me a nod. I felt reassured at that. Nick didn't seem like the sort of man to break promises easily. We packed the props and the costumes away for the next day, making sure everything would be ready to go. Mr. Beaumont dismissed us all, counting us out of the building. Will and I left with Nick, who was carrying his sack and hat in a bag for life. It had been damp and muggy December day, but as we stepped outside, the evening air was sharp and biting. It smelled like snow. My word, Mr. Beaumont said as he locked the building. It's nippy out all of a sudden. Maybe we'll get a white Christmas. I hope so, Nick said. It's not festive without snow. As he spoke, a couple of tiny flakes drifted out of the dark night and swirled through the air. Started already, he smiled. Will and I shared a look. We both knew. Now we had to decide what to do about it.